Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Bulitavu for asking this question. It goes to show that his interest in the Paris Agreement also is, by extension, interest in climate change, which is one of the greatest issues facing the whole of humanity today. But before I answer that, I'd like to also just remind him, when we talked about the ratification of the Paris Agreement on the 12th of February, the response from the opposition, Honorable Ngoboka, was that on behalf of the opposition, and I quote, "Our leader has also been at the forefront of this initiative, and we applaud the work of government towards contributing to this as part of the global community." And he goes on to say also, "Yes, Madam Speaker, we fully support the ratification of the Paris Agreement, knowing what the world is going through today. It is very urgent that we react in this manner to help, hopefully, address this threat to mankind." The Paris Agreement, Honourable Bulitavu, helps us put climate change within the global arena. Paris Agreement, as you know, has been ratified by a number of the countries in the world, almost all of them, where they have recognized that climate change, in fact, is not some hocus-pocus theory, but indeed is actually a fact, a reality. And that greenhouse emissions is, in fact, a reality, and that the seas are actually rising, and that there are countries that will actually be submerged in a few years' time, not just small island states, but also countries like Bangladesh. At the current rates that the sea levels are rising, 17% of that will go underwater. Countries like Netherlands, of course, face challenges. So the Paris Agreement, in terms of our benefit, is essentially to bring home that awareness. There's also then the issue about the commitments made by the various countries in actually reducing the greenhouse emissions. That in itself is a benefit for us, because we are, whilst we are one of the lowest contributors to carbon emissions in the world, in fact, Fiji's output is 0.004% in comparison to the rest of the world, we in Fiji, like the other Pacific Island countries, are at the forefront or the coalface of climate change. We've already relocated 3 villages. There's been about 62 villages that have already been identified that in the next few years will need to be relocated. Now, part of climate change also involves not just the relocation of villages, but also how do we provide for them sustained livelihoods. There's no point in simply moving a village, but we need to see whether we can have fish farms for them, crab farms for them, etc., so sustain livelihoods. That's part of what we call the adaptation measures. The Paris Agreement also, Madam Speaker, what it also has done is made a commitment on behalf of the developed countries of the world, and I quote from Article 4 of the agreement, that acknowledges the need for, and I quote, "scale up financial resources to achieve a balance between adaptation and mitigation, and the need for public and grant-based resources for adaptation, particularly for least developed countries and small island developing states." That's actually in the text of the Paris Agreement. So there is a recognition, and as we know, Madam Speaker, that there is also a fund that's been set up called the Green Climate Fund, which in fact Fiji has already benefited from. As part of the adaptation measures, the Water Authority of Fiji has a very big 5-year plan for the implementation of water reticulated systems, in particular in the Nosori-Suva corridor. And it's in excess of about $250 million project over 5 years. And we put that up as a proposal to the Green Climate Fund, and they have in fact committed through the ADB a grant of about $32 million. So that's a grant, it's not a loan, and it's going to be implemented towards this water reticulated system for the greater Suva-Nosori area. Similarly, Madam Speaker, there are other forms of finance that is available, some of it obviously by way of soft loans, some of it by way of grants. Also, Madam Speaker, it does resonate and highlight the need for building resilient economies. As Cyclone Winston has highlighted, Madam Speaker, that we, in the same way as we talked about yesterday about building standards and building codes, similarly we need to talk about, infrastructure. Those of us who visited northwest of Viti Levu, for example, you would have seen the electrical poles all either snapped out or tilting to one side. As the FEA CEO talked about, 9,000 kilometers of electrical cables that needed to be checked before they could go live. Now the reality though is if we put those poles back up again, and if we have another Cyclone Winston in 2 years' time, we'll be doing the same thing over again. So in terms of resilience, in terms of adaptation, we are looking at measures of as to how to maybe perhaps go terrestrial. In other words, go underground. If you cannot underground all the cables all at once, because it costs a lot of money. So the reality is, Madam Speaker, as we've done, for example, underground cabling when you come out of Nandi Airport, you don't see any overhead electrical cables. Similarly, we need to do that with the trunk routes. It's expensive. It's an expensive proposition, but in the long run, it could turn out to be inexpensive because you're not going to be always repairing poles. So this is part of the Paris Agreement issues that have come out, which we want to be able to highlight in the international forum. Fiji has also, Madam Speaker, made a commitment to reduce its carbon emissions by 30% by 2030. Notwithstanding the fact that our carbon footprint is quite low, we have still made this pledge to reduce our carbon footprint. This is why, for example, Madam Speaker, you see now I've talked about a number of new vehicles on the roads. We have zero-rated duty on cars that do not use fossil fuel. So you see a lot of hybrid cars that are on the road, and because it's become inexpensive, we'd rather we have more cars such as those as opposed to cars that completely use fossil fuels. So this is part of the commitments that we've made, and the Paris Agreement, Madam Speaker, is also to help us raise that awareness both in Fiji and, of course, offshore. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Rabiso.
In your own words, you said the islands are slowly submerging. I suppose that also includes Fiji Islands. My concern is, have you been able to look at the mainlands in Fiji, Vanuatu and Viti Levu, and already calculated to assign the people in our various Fiji Islands, if that happens, that they are assigned to the mainland, our own people? But it looks like there is a push to accommodate others in the various islands of the Pacific, or to come in. And when that time comes, there is no space for our own people. What I'm requesting, or whether are you working on making sure that our various islands that are slowly submerging have a place in the mainland to actually relocate our people before you open gates to others? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, of course, any government, any right-thinking government, will always give priority to its own citizens. As I highlighted in the earlier response, they've already identified 63 villages that are prone to be either submerged or prone to large encroaching bodies of water into those villages. We've already relocated 3 villages, and Fiji is lucky compared to some of the other Pacific Island countries because we also have large areas of high levels above sea level. Tuvalu is the highest peak above sea level is 12 feet. Yes, there are some islands in Fiji that are obviously quite low and which are habited. Of the 330 or 320 odd islands, 110 islands in Fiji are habited. So it's about a third that's habited, and most definitely the 63 villages that we've identified includes all of those villages and other areas where people live, where they will need to be relocated. And of course they will be. In respect of us giving a opportunity for others to come in, that obviously will take place in its own course of time. But in the meantime, of course, we'll be looking after our own people. Thank you.
I give the floor to Honourable Salvatore Ndundu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we acknowledge the efforts by Fiji in having to be the first country to sign the Paris Agreement. And we also recognize the contribution by ADB. But what I would like to ask the Honourable Minister is that in view of the absence of short-term and mid-term financial support in the Paris Agreement, how will Fiji, or how much has Fiji been provided with by big countries, developed countries that contribute to the 55% of emission, that is the big developing countries like Japan and the European countries? How much are those countries contributing to Fiji to pursue domestic mitigation and adaptation activities to address impacts of climate change? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
The opposition in February said that they agreed with the Paris Agreement. And I'm sure when they agreed to the ratification of the Paris Agreement, hopefully they would have read the Paris Agreement, because the Paris Agreement, Madam Speaker, in fact, quite specifically enunciates exactly what are the obligations and duties of the various parties to this particular agreement. And if the honourable member read the agreement, then she would have an answer in that, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the Honorable Samuel Abunivalu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In regard to this Paris agreement, can the Minister tell us how we are going to access to climate change? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, the access to climate finance, Madam Speaker, is something that we've been highlighting in the past couple of months. And as we, for example, said that we got some funds, about $32 million through the Green Climate Fund, through ADB. Now, the reason why it went through ADB is because you have to have what they call certified institutions that can actually access those funds. Fiji has put up the Fiji Development Bank as the financial institution that should be able to be the competent authority in Fiji to be able to access those funds and to be able to channel those funds then either to the private sector or to government. That certification process, Madam Speaker, we hope will be completed by the end of this year. The Green Climate Fund Board meets in Samoa later on this year, and FDB should be given the tick. Now, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for this question, because Climate Fund perhaps goes on to what Honourable Randondo was perhaps alluding to. The availability of climate finance, Madam Speaker, there are a number of different methodologies or different agencies through which you can access those funds. And there is no doubt, as we've highlighted in the past 3 months in the international forums, that to be able to access those funds is overly bureaucratic. So, in fact, none of the Pacific Island countries recently, when I was in Germany at the ADB meeting, and I'm going to give a ministerial statement on that, we had meetings, side meetings with the finance ministers from Samoa and Tonga and Cook Islands and various other Pacific Island countries, where we all essentially agreed that the bureaucracy around that is quite a feat to navigate through. And there is not enough capacity within the smaller island states, not just in Fiji, or in the Pacific, sorry, I should say, but also in countries like the Indian Ocean and even in the Caribbean, where they do not have the internal capacity to be able to access that. This is why we have been advocating for a centralized training center where we have smaller island states come together to be able to know how to navigate through this whole green climate finance sphere. So we have, like we said, we also putting out words out. What we also want to do is through the budgetary process we have highlighted, Madam Speaker, we've said to the different agencies, not just government ministries, to have a 4 or 5 year plan in which we can then submit as part of our adaptation measures and be able to hopefully get funding for that to be able to meet some of the challenges arising from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to the Honorable Karavaki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We understand, Madam Speaker, that the Paris Agreement is an initiative of the global family to find solutions and also a platform for assisting countries in the world, nations in the world that need assistance from the effect of climate change. When we talk about natural phenomenon, Madam Speaker, we talk about natural law. And natural law points to our moral conduct towards the Creator of heaven and earth. And Madam Speaker, all this phenomenon is controlled by the Creator. And a direct testimony on this, Madam Speaker, the island of Totoya in Lau, the village of Ndrabualu, the effect of climate change eroding their soils was enormous. And their solution was to turn to the Creator. And they went through fasting and praying. The sea, Madam Speaker, brought the sand from the ocean and buried all those places. I asked the Honourable Minister whether they are in a position to think about going towards that direction. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker, the fasting month starts on Monday. I'm going to be fasting from Monday, if that's what he's talking about. I don't know what your question is.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the Honorable Williamina Walker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As has been established, climate change will create climate change refugees. And we understand that down the line, Fiji will one day taking these refugees, which is, we are Christians, we are neighbors. But Madam Speaker, when you take in these refugees, is there a package that this government has, if we have established a package, to take to the global community and say, look, we're taking in these so many thousands of people. What are you contributing to Fiji to help us take them in, make them part of us, i.e. roads, water, electricity? There is a cost to taking in the refugees, Madam Speaker, and I wonder if government has a package that it will take to the global community to say, we'll take them in, this is what we need as a country to enable us to take in these refugees. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for the question. The taking in of refugees is a bit further down the track. We've made a philosophical commitment to this, but obviously it's not going to happen in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. It will happen much further down. And as we've said, that our priority, of course, is to be able to look after our own people first. But number two, Madam Speaker, this is part of what we're talking about, to plan ahead, to put together project proposals to the international community. And should that time come, Madam Speaker, then of course we'll be putting a proposal to the global community. Indeed, we've had many positive responses from entities like the European Union, European Commission, who are very much part and parcel of the new way of thinking pertaining to climate change and climate mitigation measures, indeed adaptation measures. And indeed, they've been very grateful of the commitment that has been made by our Honourable Prime Minister in respect of our willingness to help these people. But of course, it will take a lot of planning. As we've also highlighted, if you read the discourse on this, even in Fiji, as we've already highlighted, that there are many legal issues too. And in the budgetary allocation, which the members I'm sure would have seen in the 2016 budget, that we had in fact allocated some funding to look at exploring the legal issues pertaining to, for example, things like climate change refugees, not just in Fiji per se, or in the Pacific per se, but generally. And in fact, we've already had discussions earlier on this year. We had discussions with the Singaporeans and various other countries where we want to eke out some of these legal issues that have not necessarily been addressed in the Paris Agreement, but which will in fact become legal issues in the future. There are, for example, other legal issues pertaining to, if in a case of a country like Tuvalu, if, for example, certain islands submerge, they go beneath the waters, what happens to their territorial rights? Nobody has really thought about, if the land no longer exists, if the land is submerged beneath the water, what happens to their territorial rights? What happens to the measurement of the EEZ zone from those areas, when the countries actually are submerged? So these are a number of legal issues, Madam Speaker, that need to be eked out in the legal platform, and Fiji is obviously contributing towards that. And there are many such issues that need to be eked out before we can arrive at that position that we discussed earlier on. Thank you.